And regardless, that program would keep the money in the state.
It keeps all the money in the state, that's correct. And taxpayers put that money, gave that money to the, well, they didn't give the money to the state. We took it from them. And that's a much different scenario than a gift or a donation. And I don't, the best will always survive. And in fact, I think, I firmly believe in, to a great extent, that we probably have more four-year institutions, state institutions in Missouri than we need. A lot of it's due to historical happenstance. We needed to have them spread out throughout the state because Missouri is a fairly old state. And just like we have too many counties, we have too many four-year universities in the state. And unfortunately, that dilutes the money, especially the capital money and the maintenance or repair money across the entire state. So, seeing as we can't fix that in the political process, I'm a firm believer that the actual free market process will make Missouri a much more desirable institution over time. And I have high hopes. I won't see it in my lifetime, I don't think, but I would expect at some point to see the enrollment at this university over 40,000.
Wow. It's already increased so much just this year.
Yeah, it's 30,000 now.
Yeah.
But I think at some point we become, we have enrollment of 40,000.
Okay, I want to move on to just talk about your opponent for just a minute. What would you say are the major differences between yourself and Chris Kelly?
Well, I'm a fiscal conservative, and I'm a believer in free markets, and that combination of those two premises would force me to believe that limited government is obviously the best option that we have in this nation. Which means that I'm not in favor of higher taxes, and I'm not in favor of larger government. Chris Kelly, I think, has, for his entire political career, been an advocate for both. He did pass and worked was a huge supporter of the largest tax increase in history in the state of Missouri, Senate Bill 380 in 1993, which I think was a mistake. If they wanted to raise taxes, they had a lot of other options besides the form that bill took. I mean, that it's one of those, it reminds me of the situation, what it actually did was just, it only applied to a very small number of taxpayers, which I think is unfortunate. So if you made less than $80,000 and you were a couple in 1993, you weren't subject to the tax increase. And the other thing about it is that half of the money that the taxpayer raised came from one county. And you can guess which one that was. But it was not spread across all the taxpayers. It was not spread across the entire state in any sort of reasonable manner. It reminds me of a situation in New York now where they're going to place a special, I saw your emblem, they're going to place a special tax just on millionaires. No one else is going to pay that tax. Only people who make over $1 million a year. And it's tax policy like that that causes people to relocate, to make lots of other decisions that they shouldn't have to. The tax system of a state or a local jurisdiction or even the nation, its primary function is to raise the revenues necessary to provide the essential services of government. It should not do anything other than that. And if it does, it causes people to make decisions that they would not have otherwise made. And that's one of it's one of the costs of highly progressive tax structures. If you look at that from, there was a time when England had very highly progressive tax structure, and it should have come as no surprise that all the Beatles lived in America. They simply moved. If you had sufficient resources, you will move and move your money with it. And that's exactly what happens. And you can look at states like California now that have very high tax rates that are looking at adding additional taxes on top of that, and then you wonder why they're having out-migration for the first time. People are leaving California. Businesses are leaving California because they can't compete in the atmosphere that's there, and I want to make sure that Missouri's business climate, economic climate, is conducive to job growth and investment. And one of the ways we can do that is by lowering tax rates.
Okay. And then just one last thing. if we could just talk about building a consensus in the legislature, how will you work across the aisle, or how do you?
Well, I work across the aisle all the time.
How do you do that in order to build a consensus? How do you
You go say please. And you sit down with members of the Democratic Party, who you can't convince somebody who is at 180 degrees in opposition to you. You have to find somebody who is in that 90-degree range. And what you do is you simply go over and you talk about the issue, and you talk about the facts, and you talk about what their interest in we have a common interest in this. A good example is Sara Lampy. Sara Lampy is a legislator from Springfield, and she is known as the Queen of Gifted Programs. Now, obviously, when I got into trying to do something about gifted programs, she's the first person I went and talked to, and we were on separate committees together. We don't agree on many things, for sure, but we do agree on the necessity to have excellent gifted programs in the state. So we were able to sit down and talk about it, and I supported her bill. She supports mine. So she talks to her members of her caucus. I talk to the members of my caucus, and hopefully, if we do that often enough, and we do it in a professional manner, we can move our common goals forward, and that's how it works. We had a situation this last year. I introduced a bill that changes the filing fee on school bonds. It used to be 1/10 of 1%. So to put that in perspective, we just did a $60 million school bond issue here in Columbia. The fee for that was $60,000. Now, it only takes the Secretary of State's office about 3 to 4 hours to do the paperwork necessary to record that bond issue. So, in essence, the school district was paying the state $15,000 now to do a particular piece of work, which I think is excessive. I mean, no one else gets paid that much other than a few rock stars. So, we put a cap on it of $1,000. It's a 10th, so that takes everybody pays a little bit, but the max is $1,000. Now, that particular bill was passed after the May elections. We did that just after the elections for all the school bonds across the state. And so one of the things I wanted to do was to make sure we had an emergency clause so that it would go into effect immediately instead of August 28th when all the other bills went into effect. Now, in order to do that, you need 109 votes. You don't need 83 votes anymore. You need 109. And I introduced that. It was defeated the first time. And then I went across and talked to all the Democrats who voted against it. We chatted with them about the impact on their school district, why this is an unnecessary burden on our local school districts. We re-voted it and it passed. And that would not have been possible if I hadn't gone over and just simply asked one-on-one with them. And it turned out to be about over a dozen Democratic legislators. I said, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to punish these school districts? I know, it's a party line vote in some cases. You want to give somebody on the other side something that they can hang their hat on, so to speak, in the next election. But I said, it's important for these school districts like Liberty that had an $80 million bond issue. So we were able to sit down and come to a reasonable compromise, and we were able to get the bill passed. And so we saved the school districts of the state $800,000 in one day.
That's significant.
That's significant.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's all I had. Did you want to add anything else?
No, I think that's good.